Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. I decided to make another video. Today I kind of just wanted to check in with you guys about everything I've been reading throughout the month of January. I feel right now that it's been a really bad reading month, even though I think I only think that because I haven't really read anything for the last week. But that doesn't mean it's been a bad reading month, it's just been about a bad reading week. It's bad speaking day today, I can't talk. Through the month of January so far, I have finished 3 entire books, which for me is pretty good. And it should be 4. I'll talk about that in a second. It should be 4, but I am self-sabotaging for some reason. I've read a very weird mix of books this month. I started with one of my most anticipated reads, which was A Haunting in the Arctic by CJ Cook. CJ Cook has recently become one of my favorite authors, like favorite new authors that I've discovered. So this is a new release from her and I did read it very quickly. I did the audiobook and I loved it. I'll talk about it in a second. But I also started reading The Harp of Kings, which is like a very classic fantasy style book and is the first in a trilogy. And I also started reading Jade City because of a poll that I did on Instagram. Plus I read an indie YA romantasy that I had to read for work to see if I wanted to put it in my store. And I also read an arc that I was given from a publisher. Yeah, so it's been a very odd month of reading. So first, let's talk about Haunting in the Arctic. It's been almost like exactly a month since I finished this because I did start it before the new year. I started it around Christmas and then took a bit of a break and then finished it very early January. So a lot of my initial thoughts have changed and a lot of my like more fleeting thoughts are just gone from my head. Overall, I gave this 4 stars. As time passes, I might lower it to like a 3.75, so like 3 3/4 stars, just as I reflect upon it. The setup of this book is it is set in 2 different timelines. One timeline being in 1901 and the other timeline being set in present day 2023. Although, if you read the blurb, it implies that there is a timeline that is set in 1973. And while there are events that are discussed that happened in 1973, none of the book actually takes place in 1973. So that is a weird marketing choice that they made. Anyways, so the story that is set in 1901 is of the daughter of a man who owns a whaling company. She is pretty much right away at the beginning of the story kidnapped and forced onto one of her father's whaling ships, where she is held prisoner for a long time and really bad things happen to her. The present day timeline is of an urban explorer who has traveled to Iceland to visit the wreck of said whaling ship, and it has a lot of sort of like mysterious circumstances surrounding what happened to that ship in both 1901 and then again in 1973, and she's just exploring it as we're coming up to the date that the ship is going to be scuttled, so sunk on purpose. CJ Cook's books are always shelved as general fiction, and I don't know why. I'm not sure if that's a choice that CJ herself made or if it's the publisher. I think it's to garner a wider audience for her books and make it more like book club fiction, but her books are horror. Maybe it's because it doesn't rely as much on like frightening horror and more like unsettling psychological horror, and the characters going through some absolutely awful stuff, but there are still like paranormal aspects and it's horror. So I went into this very excited because, one, CJ Cook, as I've said, and also because I love ships and I love extreme environments. And if you combine those together, which often happens in books about ships, that is like plot line gold for me. I don't want to do spoilers for this book because it is very twisty-turny and like literally any spoilers would kind of ruin the book experience for you, so I'm not gonna give anything away. Overall, really liked it. The prose was phenomenal. I love CJ Cook's writing style. The atmosphere and setups were incredible. What I didn't love, there were things about both plot lines that I did not love. One, I saw the big twist from the start and I can't give away why I saw it, but one of my special interests gave me some extra info into the twist of this, into the clues leading to the twist. So I don't think everyone is going to get it, but I just happen to like be really passionate about a specific thing that I'm not gonna tell you what it is, but because of that, I did see the twist coming. And that's not a bad thing. I think it was still an interesting twist. It just definitely like took away from the impact of it, obviously. I also think that the twist was a little cheap. Like, I would have preferred a different ending ultimately. I'm trying to think of the best way to describe this. But I genuinely think that actually just not having a twist at the end of this book would have made it better. Just having the two plot lines not be as interconnected as they ended up being. Okay, now this is not a problem for me necessarily, but do check trigger warnings before reading A Haunting in the Arctic if you plan to. This book deals heavily with rape and sexual assaults and physical assault, emotional assault, just everything, every awful thing that you can imagine. Self-harm, disordered eating, we have all of it in here. And it is very plainly discussed, which is fine. But this is a book, this is one of those books that makes me think about how we do need trigger warnings listed in the books or ratings for books, because it does come up very suddenly, like mid-sentence. Essentially, one of the characters wakes up being assaulted, and then for the rest of the book, that's her life. And it's in detail, so not for everyone, we'll say that. I can't decide if I liked this one better than the Ghost Woods. I actually don't know. I think they're entirely even. They both had things I loved and things I didn't love. The setting of this one was much better for me, just because it does play to one of my favorite things. But the story of the Ghost Woods was more cohesive. But apparently this is her thing. Dual timelines, or triple timelines, you know? So yeah, ultimately, I will officially say it, 3 3/4 stars for A Haunting in the Arctic. I do recommend this book. It just wasn't my favorite. Okay, next I read The Witch of Fameria Wood by Hypatia Ray. I don't have the physical copy because it was never mine to own. I don't give star ratings to indie books, especially when I'm reading them for work. But I will say I did enjoy it a lot more than I thought I would. I already talked about this one a bunch in my previous video, my winter haul video. So I'm not gonna go into it again, but it is a gender-bent sleeping beauty, YA romantasy, and I had a lot of fun with it. And then the third book that I finished is Tomorrow's Children by Daniel Polanski. I did receive a digital ARC from Angry Robot. They're also sending the physical ARC. It was just delayed, so they did the digitals first to make sure that we had copies in time for release, which is February 27th, 2024. So the only other Daniel Polanski that I've read is The Builders, which I did a whole video review on how just strange that book is. And yeah, Tomorrow's Children is pretty much on par with The Builders. In fact, I would say it's the same book, just with humans now instead of animals. So the basic premise of Tomorrow's Children is it's a post-apocalyptic Western style set on the island of Manhattan. Generations ago, the funk, a noxious gas, descended on Manhattan and sort of cut it off from the rest of the world. And the remaining population now survives in this tumultuous, violent, you know, street gang, chaos, faction, Molotov cocktail lifestyle. They worship celebrities as like distant gods from the past because they see them on like billboards and in magazine relics. They use emojis instead of written language. It really is a reflection on just what would maybe happen in a real apocalypse where people don't understand like social media and current day celebrities in the mid-distant future. The inciting incident for this story is that the first ever tourist has come to Manhattan, and this brings change, and we follow the characters into battle. I wish I could tell you more about the story itself, but it has a very similar style to The Builders, which makes sense because it's the same author, but it's a style where we've got very short chapters, a ton of action, and references to things that happened before without any actual explanation. Like, all the characters know what they're talking about, and all the characters remember these specific things that they all experienced together, but we're not gonna talk about it. The reader doesn't need to know, which is fine. It's very stylistic. It's just really frustrating to read. I am giving Tomorrow's Children 2 stars. which is definitely my lowest rating of the year. I know it's only January, but I didn't love it. And it's unfortunate because I'm actually on the blog tour for this, for its release. And it would be nice to be able to like really hype it up and say a lot of things. I think ultimately I'm gonna just do my mandatory post promoting the release of the book and that I really like the cover and Daniel Polanski really excels at writing violence and hectic action scenes. I think what I've learned is that Daniel Polanski is just not for me. So thank you, Angry Robot, for sending me the arc. I've got other arcs from them anyway, so it's okay that I didn't like this one. I've liked a lot of the other ones they've sent me in the past. Again, Tomorrow's Children is coming out February 27th this year. If you like Westerns, if you like just gratuitous violence and low plot in an over-the-top, silly, post-apocalyptic Manhattan, give this one a go. I was tandem reading Tomorrow's Children while reading Jade City, so I think that also attributed to why I didn't love Tomorrow's Children, because I love Jade City. So this is the book that should be finished and should be the 4th book I've read this month, but I've got 2 hours left. I've got 2 hours left in the audiobook, and I don't know, I'm procrastinating it. Even though I love this book, I'm scared to finish it, I guess. One of the main reasons is because as soon as I finish the Jade City audiobook, my next audiobook is going to be Words of Radiance, and I've got these big plans to finish Stormlight Archive by December, and the first step of that is starting Words of Radiance, and I think I'm just scared to do it, so I'm putting off finishing Jade City. But I'm so close and it's getting ridiculous. I really should finish it. So I've talked about this before, but I have been not reading Jade City or the Greenbone Saga for a while, because despite owning Jade City, I made a poll on my Instagram like a year ago asking if it was worth the hype, because it's one of those very, very hyped books. And I got almost unanimously no as the answer. And I think that was just a weird timing coincidence, that the people who saw that story didn't like the book and people who really like the book just didn't see the story or didn't vote. But I took the opinions of my community seriously and was like, oh, I guess it's not worth the hype, I won't read it. And I did not read it for a long time. But it sort of came back onto my radar after I read Untethered Sky by Fonda Lee, which is a very different book. It's a novella that I rated 5 stars and it was in my top 5 books of 2023. But it's got me thinking about Jade City again. And I mentioned the poll that had happened previously on Instagram, and I had a lot of people reach out to me saying, what the heck, if I had seen that poll, I would have voted yes. So for my big read of January, because I like to do like one big one per month, I did a poll, should I read Jade City or should I read The Justice of Kings by Richard Swan? And again, almost unanimously, Jade City won, which I'm happy about. Right away from the start, my expectations were exceeded. I knew immediately that I would love this book and that it would probably be a 5-star read. I take notes while I read so that I can talk about them in videos, and the first note I wrote down was sick AF, which I still feel. I really love the setting and the world building. The world building is chef's kiss. I think it's incredible. It's very unique to what I've been reading recently. And it also reminds me a lot of Peaky Blinders, which is one of my favorite shows. I know the comparison is not great because the only comparison is really just like Mafia family. Unfortunately, I had the big death spoiled for me. If you've read the series, you know there's a big death in book 1 that kind of comes out of nowhere. I didn't anticipate that happening, and it was mentioned to me by a coworker by accident. She thought I was farther ahead in the book than I was. But ultimately, I'm not mad about that, because when the death did come, yeah, I wasn't shocked by the situation. Like, I knew the character was not going to survive, but they did die differently than I thought they would, and it was actually the aftermath of that death that, like, gave me chills. Like, I guess skip ahead if you don't want any spoilers, but I'll give a little more detail. There's a character that has not been using the powers that the whole family has for the majority of the book. She's intentionally left that life behind, and has been sort of very docile, and she's using her intellect and her smarts to be involved in the story, but she's not been like physically violent in the story while the rest of the characters have. Although it's been alluded to that she is like one of the most talented fighters, but we don't get to see that. So following the death, There's a sequence where she like changes her mind about that. It's epic, it's incredible. Literal chills. I teared up from her reaction to the death, and it was stunning. Very well written. And I'm hoping for more. Yeah, those are my thoughts on Jade City. I would give you more, but I haven't finished the book. I have 2 hours left, what am I doing? Another book I haven't finished is the Harp of Kings, which I started earlier January, like second week of January, and I adore this. It's very tropey high fantasy. Like every element that's in it is something I've seen before, but the prose is phenomenal, and it is about bards, which is a class type that I don't see a lot of books about, so that's pretty fun. It's a high fantasy quest story. These three are in training on a fighter island. They have to go on a secret mission, and you know, they're fighting for a place on the island. We have 3 main characters in the book. I don't know how to say their names. Lavon, I want to say. It's spelled like the Irish way of spelling Siobhan, but with an L at the start, so I want to say it's Lavon. Love her. She's our main character, main character, because there's 3 POVs, but she's like the main one, and she is a fighter, a badass, and I love her because she's not small. A lot of fantasy books will have a main female character who is a total baddie and can fight and is violent and a killer, but she's like 5 feet tall and skinny, and you're like, how are you doing this? Like, yeah, sometimes they have magic and they're using their magic to be a baddie, but also a lot of the times they're using a sword, and you're like, how? So anyways, Lavon, who's on the cover here, is tall and broad and actually strong and can beat up the boys. Her brother Brock, which is B-R-O-C-C, and in my head when I read his name, I only can call him Broccoli or Broccolini. I can't not read it that way. Brock is a gentle soul. He is a harpist at heart, and he's really only at this training island because his sister's there and like they do everything together. He's shorter than Lavon. That's important as well. I would say Brock is my least favorite POV because he just doesn't really do much yet except be sad that he can't play the harp. He's a cinnamon roll character is how it is, and I don't love cinnamon roll characters. The last POV is Dao. We're gonna call him Dao, I think. D-A-U. He is the most incel energy character I've ever read, but I love him for some reason. I know he's sexist and awful and very weird, but his POV is written in such an engaging way to me where I'm like, I love being in his head. I'm not saying I like him because of his actions, I just really enjoy reading his POV. And that's all I know so far also, because I'm only 71 pages in. That's nothing. I started this and I loved it, but I've just had so many other things going on that this one unfortunately has been put on the back burner. I did prioritize Tomorrow's Children and Witch of Femeria Wood over this. Plus it's also easier to just jump back into an audiobook, so Jade City was easier to keep up with than Harp of Kings, and I do want to read this physically. I don't want to do the audiobook. And extra, unfortunately, I think I'm actually gonna have to put this one on like an indefinite pause because starting February, I have a lot of other book commitments to read, and I'm not far enough into Harp of Kings to like just sit down and finish it, you know? We're coming back though, it's not a DNF. I really like it. So in February, we'll talk about my February TBR a little bit. It's quite ambitious. I am part of 2 buddy reads, right? My friend Lisa on Instagram and I are reading Ancillary Justice by Anne Leckie. This is one that's been on my TBR for quite a long time, and I mentioned it in one of my videos, and she reached out, was like, hey, do you want to buddy read it? And I was like, yes, I do. We are going to be reading this in February. My plan is to read the physical book because it's not super long. And then I signed up for like a big group read of After the Forest. I don't even remember the author's name because I don't have the physical book yet. I'm still waiting for it to arrive, but I'll put it on screen. This is a like what happened after the story of Hansel and Gretel story. I'm not actually sure if it's YA or adult fantasy. I don't remember. And I was initially excited for this buddy read, and I think the cover is very beautiful, but like the closer I get to it and the more other books I'm committing to, I'm thinking of dropping out of this group read. One thing is that the group has become enormous, which is not an issue. Like, yeah, let's all read this book, but there's a chat for it that's just chaos. And I read with this same group last year, we read Kashiel's Dart, which I ended up DNFing, and again it was like the group chat is just chaos, and it goes on so many tangents that it's not really about the book anymore, and I'm feeling that the same thing is gonna happen in After the Forest. So first of all, my copy's not even here yet, so I'm not gonna be able to start on February 1st like everyone else is, so I might gauge what the chat is like on February 1st or until I get the book, and then if it feels like something I do want to commit to and continue with and be involved in, I'll give it a go. It's a short book, but that one is my like lowest priority for February for sure. As I already mentioned, I'm gonna be starting the audiobook for Words of Radiance by Brandon Sanderson as soon as I finish Jade City, which I think is going to be today. Tonight at work, we're doing inventory. So if you've never worked retail before, that's when you go to the store after hours and you count everything that's for sale in the store so that we could have our inventory up to date. So this is gonna be many hours of just like mostly mindless physical labor, and I plan on listening to an audiobook while I'm there. Originally, I was gonna finish Jade City while I'm there, but I definitely have enough hours in the day between now and inventory to just get Jade City out of the way. And then ideally start Words of Radiance tonight during inventory. And then my regular reading plans for February, or just like for a month in general, are completely derailed because I'm going to Mexico for just over a week in the end of February. We're leaving February 17th. And I really want to do a lot of filming there, and I didn't really know what I wanted to film, so I decided to pick up some books that like make sense for Mexico. So the one that I'm very excited about that I know for sure I'm going to be reading in Mexico is The Ruins by Scott Smith. This was recommended to me by my friend Rob, and apparently it's a really horrific story about two couples who go on a chilled out Mexican vacation and visit some ruins, and then some awful horror nonsense happens. And what do you know? We're two couples going on a lazy Mexico vacation, and we're gonna be visiting ruins. So I hope the exact events that happen in this book happen to me. That would be my vlog. I read this and then it came true. It's pretty short. Rob says it's extremely traumatizing, and it better be. If it's not, I'm gonna be disappointed. But I did pick up two other books, or I already had two other books that I theoretically want to read in Mexico, but that's a lot of reading for only 1 week of vacation. But I have had The Hacienda and The Vampires of El Norte by Isabel Cañas on my TBR for a long time, and both of these just feel like the vibe. So I will bring them with me because I've got room in my luggage. If I finish The Ruins super quickly, I will jump into one of these, and then I don't know how much like lounge time we're gonna be actually having because we haven't picked out our excursions yet. So I'm not sure how much time I'll actually have to read in Mexico, but maybe I'll read 3 books while I'm there and also still be listening to the audiobook of Words of Radiance and doing my 2 buddy reads. And if I have time, getting back to Harp of Kings. Yeah, no, I can do it. I can do it. So that's everything I read in January, and then my ideal TBR for February, although I doubt it's gonna happen. I'm gonna do my best. I can already tell you that After the Forest is probably gonna fall by the wayside and not be read. Something's wrong in my brain where I need to do like 8 activities at the same time in order to focus on anything. So my plan for the day is I'm gonna listen to the Jade City audiobook while playing Enshrouded and watching Spirited Away, because I have an urge to watch Spirited Away right now. So I'm gonna have that on the TV in the background. I'm gonna play Enshrouded, which is this new survival game that we're freaking loving, and I'll finish Jade City. There was another book I was supposed to include in this. I'm reading an anthology collection of traditional Japanese horror stories. I had some notes on what I was gonna say about that one. It's called The Snow Ghost and Other Stories. I like it a lot, but I'm at a standstill because one of the stories, or the story I'm on right now, is like really long, which is not what I signed up for in an anthology of short stories. So I'll still be reading that in February or March or April or June or July or the rest of the year. That one's just for fun though. It's not really like a TBR book, and it's just kind of, I feel like reading right now, but I don't want to commit to anything. I'll read a short story. Okay, I'm done. Before I go, don't forget to like and subscribe and ring the bell icon so you know when I upload new videos. I upload 2 days a week. I love you guys. Goodbye.